200 Apache warriors don't show up at your ranch door just to ask for directions. They come for blood, for justice, or for war. And tonight, Samuel Carter, a lonely rancher near Amarillo, Texas, is about to find out which choice he's on. But it all started with a small decision this morning. He took two young Apache girls, exhausted by a stream, home to save their lives. A seemingly simple act of kindness turned into a fire that could burn down an entire frontier. What would you do? Turn in the girls to save your own life? Or stand firm in defending them in the face of a bloodthirsty tribe? Put yourself in Sam's shoes and walk through this story with him. On the Llano Estacado Plateau, the summer of 1875 was scorching. The sun beat down mercilessly, the ground cracked, and every blade of silver-gray grass seemed ready to snap under the horses' feet. In the distance, dust billowed and dissolved into the air, like the weary breath of the vast land that white men called the Wild West. Samuel Carter, people called him simply Sam, was busy mending the wooden fence around the herd of cattle. Sam was in his early 30s, the sturdy build of a farmer from the far west, his face weathered by the sun and wind, his blue eyes filled with deep sadness. 3 years ago, Sam had lost his wife and young son to a cholera epidemic that swept through Amarillo. Since then, he had lived alone, with only his cattle and the barren land as companions. The people in the area respected Sam's diligence and honesty, but also sympathized with the loneliness he harbored. That morning, Sam heard something strange. It was not the sound of wind, nor the sound of birds. It was like the sound of dragging feet, light but urgent, approaching the small stream that ran through the end of the field. Sam looked up, his hand holding the wooden hammer still. On the sun-dappled ground, two figures appeared, two young Apache girls. They were staggering, swaying as if about to fall. Their clothes were torn, their bare feet were covered in red dust, their long black hair was tangled by the wind and sand. One was about 21, tall and thin, but her eyes still held a determined look. The other was a little younger, about 20, tougher looking, but her shoulders shook with exhaustion. Sam recognized immediately. These were no lost white people. These were Apache women, a tribe that the settlers feared for their surprise attacks, for the sound of war drums echoing from the canyons on blood moon nights. Any other farmer would have rushed to grab his gun, or at least taken cover. But Sam was different. He put down his hammer and walked slowly toward the two girls. The image of his wife and son flashed through his mind. Once again, he saw the desperate eyes of someone dying of thirst and hunger, the eyes that he had been powerless to save. The older sister looked up at Sam, her eyes dark as if she wanted to say something, then she collapsed. The younger sister tried to support them, but both of them collapsed right at the edge of the stream. Without thinking, Sam rushed over and knelt down. He placed his hand over their mouths, felt their weak breathing, then immediately pulled the two thin bodies onto his shoulders, and with heavy steps carried them back to his wooden cabin. In the simple house, Sam lit a fire, reheating the pot of meat stew left over from last night. He took clean water from the wooden barrel, slowly pouring sips for the two girls. They trembled, drinking hastily, as if afraid of losing their last chance. When the smell of the stew spread throughout the room, their eyes flashed with a ray of life. Sam gently lifted the spoon, and for the first time, he heard a whisper Apache, quick, anxious, but he didn't understand. The older sister gently placed her hand on her chest and introduced herself, Nelly. Then she pointed to her younger sister, Ahioka. Sam smiled awkwardly and pointed to himself, Sam. In that moment, three people from three different worlds connected by simple gestures, overcoming all language barriers. But as Sam carefully covered them with his only blanket, he noticed something that made his heart clench. Around Nayeli's neck was a delicate beaded necklace, with a pattern that Sam had heard about. Last week, in the town of Amarillo, the Mexican trader had told him that the daughter of Chief Red Hawk, the Apache leader of the White Mountains, used to wear it at festivals. Sam froze. If that was true, the two girls he had just rescued were not just unknown Apaches. They were the chief's daughters, people worth more than cattle or a small town. And keeping them in his house, even if it was to save them, could be considered kidnapping, a grave insult to the Apache tribe. He shuddered. Images from years ago came flooding back. A camp near Santa Fe burned down because a white man had been suspected of insulting an Apache woman. Sam knew that if word got out, it would be not just his ranch, but the whole of Amarillo that would suffer. That afternoon, the sound of hooves rang out. In the distance, Sam saw 3 riders approaching. Cletus Hartwell, a neighbor, his face red with anger. Deputy Sheriff John Miller, the son of the Amarillo sheriff, and Reverend Thomas Green, a gentle but worried pastor. Before he could dismount, Cletus shouted, "Sam, what the hell are you doing? They say there's an Apache smoke signal out in the hills. They're looking for someone. Don't tell me you have one of their own in your house." Deputy Miller looked straight at Sam, his eyes serious. "The news from town is clear. Chief Red Hawk's 2 daughters went missing 3 days ago. They were out hunting, lost in a sandstorm. The Apaches are mad. If they trace their tracks to this ranch, Sam, it's not just you, it's all of us." Sam was speechless. The truth was out. There was no turning back. He replied, his voice low but firm. "Yes, they are here. They are exhausted, starving. I cannot leave them." The air was quiet. Reverend Green put his hand to his forehead, sighed softly. "Son, do you understand what you have done? You saved them, but the whole town may pay. The Apaches will not believe in kindness. They will think you are kidnapping." Deputy Miller bit his lip, then turned his horse. "I must warn the town, but I will give you some time. Bring them back before it is too late, Sam. Otherwise, when Red Hawk comes, no one will be able to save you." The 3 of them left, leaving Sam alone in the hot afternoon. In the cabin, Nayeli and Ahioka's even breathing echoed. They had fallen into an exhausted sleep. Sam stood there, watching the 2 young women, his heart torn. Either choice would lead to a storm. Sending them away in the night would mean certain death. Keeping them would be like waiting for the enemy to come to the door. As the sun sank, the ground red, Sam heard a sound that made his blood run cold. The distant beat of drums. Faint at first, then growing clearer, the slow, steady beat of the giant footsteps of fate. It was not the beat of a festival, Sam knew. It was the beat of a war drum. Tonight, the quiet land around Amarillo would no longer be peaceful. And everything Sam's life, the lives of the 2 Apache girls, and the fragile trust between worlds would be decided. The sound of Apache drums echoed through the hills, each beat pounding like the heart of the earth. Sam Carter stood frozen on the porch of the cabin, his eyes glued to the red horizon of the sunset. He had heard the sounds before, long ago, in the horrors of besieged cavalry, burned villages. But never had it been so close, so clear, as if death were knocking at his door. In the cabin, Nayeli and Ahioka woke with a start. They spoke quickly in Apache, their voices shaking. Sam did not understand, but he saw the familiar terror in their eyes. Nayeli took her hand, then pointed toward the hills, her lips moving. "Ina, Ada," words Sam did not understand, but guessed they were referring to their father, to the tribe. Sam entered, knelt before the 2 girls. "They came for you, didn't they?" he asked slowly, trying to make them understand. Nayeli nodded vigorously, her eyes filled with tears, and Ahioka clenched her fists, anxious and angry. Sam took a deep breath. He knew there was no escape at this moment. The second visit. The sound of hooves thundered in the yard. Sam rushed out onto the porch to find Cletus Hartwell back, alone this time, his face red and sweaty. "Sam, I just got back from town. The news has spread. They've put up barricades, prepared weapons. The sheriff says if the Apaches attack, Amarillo won't be able to hold out. They want to know if you're hiding Red Hawk's daughter." Sam didn't answer. His eyes were fixed, as if he wanted to admit it but didn't say it. Cletus hissed, "You crazy? You want us all dead? Give them back. Don't let the Apaches think you kidnapped us. If they come, we'll all be buried in the sand." Sam turned, looked at Nayeli and Ahioka, then at Cletus. "I can't hand them over like animals," he said slowly. "They'll die before they can explain. I saved them, Cletus. I can't turn away now." Cletus rolled his eyes, cursed, then cracked his whip and rode away, leaving a cloud of dust. Night fell. As darkness swept across the plateau, the drumming stopped. Instead, a long, blood-curdling howl echoed from the canyons. Sam turned off the lights, bolted the door, and checked his lone rifle. But he knew, one gun, a few bullets, was nothing against hundreds of Apache warriors. Nayeli stepped closer, put her hand on his gun, and shook her head. In broken English, she said, "No, fight, die." Sam looked at her, his heart sinking. In the flickering light, he saw the determination in the young girl's eyes. This was not a child to be protected. This was a chief's daughter, raised in war, who knew better than anyone that blood would only call for more blood. Ahioka was different. She clutched the small knife at her waist, her eyes blazing with fire. Though tired, she was still ready to fight, like a cornered wolf. Sam sat down at the table, speaking slowly. "Tomorrow, I will take you two back. I don't know if I will live, but I must at least try." Nayeli put her hand on his chest, her eyes grateful. Ahioka turned away, her shoulders tense, as if she could not accept the sacrifice of a white man for her. In the middle of the night, a voice rang out from the courtyard. Deep, cold, but clear in English. "White man, you hold what is not yours. Let go, and perhaps you will live until morning." Sam stood still. That voice, he knew, could only be Chief Red Hawk's. The cabin door shook with a loud knock. Sam tried to open it, but Nayeli pulled him back, shaking her head, her eyes full of panic. She whispered in Apache, then held her hand across her neck, signaling danger. Sam didn't understand, but he knew, if he stepped out the wrong way, he would die instantly. He turned back to the girls. "I don't want to lie. If I don't say anything, they'll think I'm hiding it from you." Nayeli hesitated, then nodded. She stepped forward, signaling. Together, Sam opened the door. Outside, the flickering fire lit up the clearing. Hundreds of Apache warriors were lined up in an arc, mounted on horses, silent as statues. Spears, bows, all pointed straight at the cabin. In the center, Chief Red Hawk tall, long-haired and silver, eyes as sharp as blades. Beside him, Broken Lance, his face fierce, ready to pounce. As Nayeli and Ahioka appeared behind Sam, whispers spread throughout the army. Chief Red Hawk stepped forward, his voice thunderous. "You touched my daughter. You will pay." Sam raised his hand, shaking but clear. "I didn't kidnap them. I just saved them from death." Broken Lance roared in Apache, then translated into English, clumsily. "Lies. The white man always lies. He keeps them for cattle, for our blood." Ahioka couldn't bear it, stepped forward, shouting in Apache. Her voice echoed, burning like fire. All eyes turned to her. Chief Red Hawk squinted, listening intently. Nayeli stepped forward, trying to piece together a few words in English. Food, water, safe. No hurt, save us." Sam pulled from his pocket a piece of torn cloth caught in the fence, the remains of Nayeli's dress, and held it up in front of Chief Red Hawk. "Here, proof. They came from the spring. I didn't hurt them." Chief Red Hawk looked at the cloth, his eyes wavering. But Broken Lance raised his spear, shouting, "Words? Cloth? Not enough. Blood." The warriors shouted in unison in Apache. The air was as tense as a string, ready to burst. Chief Red Hawk raised his hand to signal. The warriors fell silent. He looked straight at Sam, his eyes piercing. "You said you saved them, but you kept them overnight. Why? Why didn't you return them right away?" Sam choked. "They're too weak. They'll die on the road. I'll wait until morning to bring them back." His words rang out, sincere, but not convincing enough. Chief Red Hawk was silent for a long time. Then he signaled. Two warriors stepped forward, pulling Nayeli and Ahioka behind them. Sam panicked, took half a step forward, but the spears were immediately pointed at his chest. Chief Red Hawk spoke. "If you are truly innocent, you will come with us. Tonight, the council will judge. If you lie, your blood will pay." Sam swallowed. He looked back at the cabin, the old roof, the family photo on the table, everything that remained of his life. It was probably the last time he would see them, but he knew he had no choice. He nodded. I will go. The caravan set off that night. Sam was placed in the middle of a circle of warriors, surrounded by flickering torches. The borrowed horse neighed in fear. Nayeli looked back at Sam, her eyes steady, as if to reassure him. Ahioka bit her lip, her anger still burning. The moon rose high, illuminating the winding path through the Rocky Mountains. Sam could clearly feel every gaze behind him, every arrow ready to pierce him. He knew one small mistake, and he would not live to see dawn. Sam was escorted back to the Apache village to face the Judgment Council. Chato conflict escalated. Rescue people to accuse to confront leader and extremist fighters to led back to village at night. The night on the plateau was colder than Sam had imagined. The wind whistled through the ravines, swirling dust and sand, slipping through his clothes, making his whole body shiver. But it wasn't the cold that scared Sam. It was the hundreds of eyes behind him, each arrow, each spear silently watching, ready to pierce his chest at the slightest mistake. The Apaches led Sam on for hours. The flickering torches created long, winding streaks of light like fire snakes, following the trail between the White Mountains. In the distance, the flickering lights of dozens of fires appeared, along with the barking of dogs, the beating of buffalo hide drums, and the whispering of women. Sam understood. He had entered the heart of the Apache tribe. The village was built around a large square of earth, in the middle of which was a large fire burning fiercely. On one side, 7 Apache elders sat in a semicircle, their hair silver, their faces hard, their eyes as deep as the mountain's rocks. In the middle, Chief Red Hawk stood tall, his deerskin coat intricately embroidered, his long silver hair reflecting the firelight. To his right, Broken Lance held his spear, his face fierce, his eyes burning with hatred. Sam was dragged into the center of the fire. The whole village surrounded him. Their eyes were not only angry, but curious, skeptical, contemptuous. He knew he was probably the first white man to enter this place alive, and maybe the last. Nayeli and Ahioka were taken to the other side, near Red Hawk. The 2 girls immediately broke free, running toward their father. Red Hawk hugged them, his steady eyes wavering when he saw his 2 daughters alive. For a brief moment, Sam saw more of a father than a leader. But then Red Hawk released them, his face hard as stone, his eyes fixed on Sam. Red Hawk spoke in a deep voice, each word in clear English, but as cold as a knife. You have my daughter. You know what that means. The Apaches have bled for less. Sam swallowed and replied, I didn't kidnap them. I just found them by the stream. They were starving. I brought them back, fed them, gave them water. That's all. Broken Lance laughed harshly, his laugh like iron rubbing against steel. Lies. The white man always uses so-called kindness to hide his evil intentions. He wants to trade them for cattle, to use them as shields. If we let him go, tomorrow the whole town will laugh at the Apaches. The warriors chanted, stomping their feet in time. The shouts of Wasatchu, Wasatchu, white man, thundered. Sam felt his heart constrict. He knew that, here, reason might not work. Nayeli rushed forward, her eyes shining with unusual courage. She spoke in rapid Apache, her voice trembling but clear. Everyone fell silent. Red Hawk listened, his face changing with each word. Frowning, surprised, silent. Sam didn't understand, but when Nayeli pointed at him, he felt his whole life hanging on the girl's tongue. Then Ahioka stepped forward. She wasn't as calm as her sister. Her voice was loud, decisive, like a whip. She pointed at Broken Lance, spoke at length, then beat her hand on her chest, then pointed at Sam. The crowd stirred. Broken Lance was angry, roaring. But some of the warriors began to hesitate. They whispered to each other, their eyes less fierce. Red Hawk raised his hand for silence, then turned to Sam. My daughter said you feed them, give them water, give them blankets to sleep on. You could have killed them, but you didn't. Is that right? Sam nodded vigorously. Yes, I don't want anything from them. I just can't let them die. Red Hawk stepped closer, his eyes glowing in the firelight. You know who they are. You know the price of keeping them. Why? Sam choked. He pulled a small, old, ragged photograph from his pocket, a picture of his wife and son. He held it up. I had a family. I lost them. When I saw the girls dying, I remembered my son. I can't let that happen again. The square was silent. The fire crackled, the wind whistled, but no one spoke. Red Hawk looked at the photograph for a long time. Pain flashed in his eyes. Then it was gone. He turned back to the council. The 7 elders spoke in Apache. Their voices were low, slow, and thoughtful. Broken Lance refused, shouting loudly, urging blood to be paid. Some warriors joined in, and the noise grew. Nayeli suddenly fell to her knees before the council, speaking at length. Ahioka knelt as well, but her voice was strong, as if challenging the entire tribe. The oldest, White Crow, was silent the longest. Then he leaned on his stick and stood up, his voice hoarse but resounding. This white man saved the chief's daughter. If he wanted to harm her, she would have died. If he wanted to trade, he would have demanded it. But he only gave her food, water, and blankets. That is not a crime. The crowd was noisy. Broken Lance shouted, "If we let him go, where is the honor of the Apache? The white men will laugh at us." White Crow looked straight at him and replied, "Honor is not killing the innocent. Honor is knowing the difference between an enemy and a benefactor." The whole square fell silent. The tension is at its peak. Broken Lance was furious. He stepped into the middle of the courtyard, pointing his spear at Sam. "If you don't do it, I will. Blood for blood." He charged forward, spear aimed straight at Sam's chest. Everything seemed to explode. But at that moment, Ahioka stood in front of Sam. She shouted in Apache, her voice broken but defiant. Broken Lance stopped, surprised. Nayeli ran up, grabbed her arm, and they both shouted. Red Hawk stepped forward, his iron hand grabbing the shaft of Broken Lance's spear, holding it tight. He roared, "Enough!" His gaze swept over the entire warrior. "If anyone wants blood, they must first pass through me. But I say this is my benefactor, and my word is law." The silence stretched on, heavy as a mountain. Broken Lance trembled with anger, but then slowly lowered his spear, retreating. Sam gasped, his legs almost giving out. He knew he had just escaped death by a hair's breadth. Red Hawk turned to the council. The elders nodded in agreement. The chief spoke slowly, his voice booming. "This white man is not an enemy. Tonight, his life is spared. But he must promise. If the Apache ever need him, he will help them as he helped my son. Otherwise, the promise is broken. Blood for blood." Sam's voice choked. He bowed his head. "I promise." A ripple of commotion spread. The warriors were still restless, but they knew the chief's orders were absolute. Nayeli looked at Sam, her eyes brimming with tears. Ahioka nodded, her gaze hard but now softening. Sam knew the war was not over, but he had just passed through the door of life and death. Sam had narrowly escaped death thanks to the testimony of the 2 girls and the intervention of Red Hawk. But now he bore a promise to the entire tribe. The cold night wind blew across the White Mountains as the council broke up. The great fire in the square died down, leaving only red ashes. Sam stood there, feeling his legs give out. He had just survived a trial that had cost him his life with a nod. Nayeli and Ahioka approached. Nayeli gently took his hand, whispering, "Safe. Now." Ahioka's eyes were still burning but no longer resentful. She nodded, as if acknowledging that Sam was indeed their savior. Night in the Apache village. Sam was placed in a tent on the edge of the village, with 2 warriors guarding him. He didn't know if they were there to protect him or to make sure he didn't escape. Either way, Sam was too exhausted to care. Before he closed his eyes, he saw 2 figures, Nayeli and Ahioka talking to their father. Chief Red Hawk was silent, listening to his daughter, nodding occasionally. The image was seared into Sam's mind. The next morning, the sun was shining brightly over the village. Children ran around the fire, women carried water, warriors prepared their horses. A few eyes still looked at Sam suspiciously, but not as sharply as the night before. White Crow, the oldest of the elders, approached. He sat down next to Sam, his eyes dull but still bright with experience. He spoke in a slow Apache accent, with Nayeli translating, "You saved the chief's 2 daughters. That cannot be denied. But remember, Apache trust is as thin as ice on a spring river. One false step, and you will sink. Sam nodded, slowly. I understand. I promised, and I keep my word. Back to Amarillo. That afternoon, Red Hawk personally led a group of cavalry to escort Sam south, near the Amarillo border. Nayeli and Ahioka accompanied him. A few miles from town, Red Hawk stopped. He looked at Sam, his eyes stern. The white men in town will suspect you. They will ask what you said, what you promised. Remember, you live by honor. Honor is what binds you and me. Sam replied firmly. I will not betray. Nayeli and Ahioka each squeezed his hand once, then turned their horses and rode back. Sam watched, his heart heavy. He knew he had left behind not only danger, but also a strange, unbreakable bond. Across town, Amarillo was in an uproar as Sam rode back. The people gathered in the square, where Sheriff Morrison stood waiting with Deputy John Miller and Reverend Green. Everyone thought Sam was dead. The sheriff stepped forward, frowning. Good God. Sam, are you alive? Did the Apache spare you? Sam recounted, briefly, but truthfully. He had rescued 2 Apache girls, taken by the tribe to the village, faced the council, and then been released on their own testimony. The crowd was in an uproar. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Cletus Hartwell shouted, You're crazy, Sam. You've brought disaster upon us. They'll be back, and they won't spare us again. Reverend Green raised his hand to stop him. We should be grateful. A benefactor has just escaped death, and this town hasn't been flattened. He risked his life to save people, not to hurt anyone. Sheriff Morrison pondered, then nodded. Sam, be careful from now on. Not everyone in town understands, and not everyone in the Apache tribe believes. You're in the line of fire. Sam just smiled wearily. I'm used to it. In the days that followed, Sam returned to the ranch. Life gradually became peaceful, tending cows, mending fences, fixing horse stables. But it was not the same. The townspeople whispered behind his back. Some called him a traitor, others a madman. Only a few like Reverend Green even shook his hand in the marketplace. Meanwhile, sometimes, on windless afternoons, Sam would see the silhouettes of Apaches standing on the hills in the distance, looking toward the ranch. No one approached. No one provoked. It was as if they had come only to make sure he was still there. Once, he found a small beaded necklace, Apache in design, neatly placed by the fence. Sam picked it up, knowing it was a reminder the tribe was still watching. A week later, Reverend Green visited the farm. He sat on the porch with Sam, drinking bitter coffee. The Reverend said in a low voice, Sam, I believe God has used you as an instrument of peace. But tell me the truth. Are you afraid? Sam looked toward the horizon, where the hills stretched out. Afraid. But I also know, sometimes a single act of kindness can change everything. I lost my family to the plague. I can't lose my conscience by turning my back on 2 dying girls. The Reverend nodded, his eyes shining with admiration. The rumor spread. The story of the white man spared by the Apache spread throughout the region. Some believed it, some scoffed at it, some were skeptical. But it also made some caravans more daring to pass through Apache territory, believing that it was safe to do so if they didn't cause trouble. Sam became a household name in both the tavern and the market. But he didn't get richer, nor more famous. He still lived alone, looking out at the vast fields every day, his heart filled with the old sadness and the burden of a promise. A familiar figure. One afternoon, as the sun set behind the hills, Sam heard the light sound of horse hooves at the gate. He looked up, his heart aching slightly. Nayeli and Ahioka. They returned, their faces bright, carrying a leather bag of cornbread and dried meat. Nayeli smiled, trying to speak in English. Friend, always. Ahioka did not speak, only placing on the table another beaded bracelet, newer, more delicate. She looked at Sam for a long time, her eyes both grateful and serious. Like a reminder, this bond would never be broken. Sam looked at them, suddenly feeling an indescribable feeling rising in his heart, at once warm, anxious, and like the beginning of something greater. Sam was released, but now became a fragile bridge between 2 worlds. Tension remains, Skeptical eyes still follow, and his every move from now on could decide the fate of an entire land. In the spring of 1876, the wind blew across the Llano Estacado prairie, carrying the scent of wildflowers and golden sand. Sam Carter, who had lived alone on an old log farm, saw his life change. After the fateful night in the White Mountains, he was no longer just a farmer living on the margins, but became a fragile bridge between Amarillo and the Apache tribe. And the biggest change came from the two girls he saved, Nayeli and Ioka. At first, the two sisters came to the farm with the warriors, bearing gifts of thanks. Gradually, only Nayeli appeared, riding a horse carrying cornbread, smiling gently. She learned more English from Sam, and he learned a few Apache words from her. In the afternoons, they sat on the porch, watching the red sunset over the grasslands. Few words, many smiles. The silence between them was no longer strange, but became a thread connecting two hearts. Sam, after years of grieving the loss of his wife and children, felt for the first time that he could be moved again. Rumors spread quickly. The Amarillos whispered, "Sam Carter is going to marry the Apache chief's daughter?" Crazy. Some traders feared he would bring the whole tribe to town. Meanwhile, in the White Mountains, many warriors were furious. Broken Lance shouted at a meeting, "The chief's daughter cannot marry a Wasatchu. It's a disgrace." Only Chief Red Hawk remained silent, his eyes deep, as if letting his daughter make her own choice. Nayeli's decision. One day, when Sam came to the village to return a wounded warrior, Nayeli suddenly stood in the middle of the square, taking his hand. Her voice was clear and decisive. "Not just gratitude. My heart chooses you." The announcement caused a stir in the village. Broken Lance was furious, but Red Hawk raised his hand to stop him, saying nothing. His silence was his acceptance. In the summer of 1877, a special wedding took place on the Carter Ranch. Reverend Green from Amarillo read a prayer, and Elder White Crow blessed in Apache. Today, two bloods are joined as one. If they respect each other, they will nourish each other. Sam gave Nayeli a simple silver ring, and Nayeli placed an heirloom bead necklace around his neck. The crowd was silent for a moment, then cheered. For the first time, whites and Apaches were celebrating by the same fire. The ranch, which had been dreary, was now full of life. Nayeli learned to bake bread, and Sam learned to roast venison according to Apache customs. They argued over small differences, but always reconciled around the fire. Ahioka visited often, both as a sister-in-law and a protector. Sam came to regard her as his own sister. In 1879, Nayeli gave birth to a baby boy, David Red Hawk Carter. The child had blue eyes and thick black hair. Then came two more girls. The cries and laughter turned the farm into a real home. The Amarillos gradually accepted Nayeli when she went to market with her husband and children. The Apaches got used to Sam appearing in the village, carrying tools or cows to trade. The Carter farm became a neutral ground, where two worlds that had once pointed guns at each other could sit down. One day, a group of drunken cavalrymen came, intending to arrest Nayeli and her child because they considered them Indians. Sam stood in the doorway, gun in hand, eyes determined. The tension only dissipated when Sheriff Morrison arrived in time. Nayeli hugged her child, whispering, "You protect, always." Sam squeezed his wife's shoulder. "Until my last breath." Time passed. The Carter children, Red Hawk, grew up, learning to ride horses, shoot arrows, read books, sing hymns. They spoke both English and Apache, understanding both worlds. Sam grew old, his hair white, his back bent. But as he looked around the dinner table at his family, he knew he had found it all: love, children, and a new community. In the spring of 1914, Sam Carter died in his sleep at the age of 73. Beside him was Nayeli, her hair now gray, still holding her husband's hand. Ahioka, now an Apache elder, stood beside him, her eyes red but full of pride. On the bedside table were three keepsakes: an old photograph of his deceased wife and children, the beaded necklace Nayeli had given him on their wedding day, Ahioka's small knife, a symbol of protection, Amarillo's most special funeral took place. Whites and Apaches together to mourn Sam Carter. Reverend Green prayed, and White Crow whispered in Apache, "This man lived with two souls, and both are ours." Nayeli lived on for many more years, telling her children and grandchildren the story by the fire, about the day she fainted by the stream, and how Sam saved her, and how his kindness changed the fate of two peoples. The half-breed Carter Red Hawk grew up, becoming a bridge between Amarillo and Apache, no longer carrying hatred. People still tell of Sam Carter and Nayeli, a love that transcended barriers, connecting two worlds once engulfed in blood and fire. And on the Llano Estacado Prairie, people believe their spirits still ride side by side, a cowboy and an Apache, as proof that love and kindness can change history.